Welcome to Mediaspace Members Daily. We bring you exclusive interviews from our leadership group and other professional influencers within the media, marketing, gov tech community globally. Today I have with me Marco Callegari, co-founder and director of Media Ventures International, that represents a forward approach to targeting special audiences through digital and print content, event research and data. Hi Marco, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. What are the key challenges in professional publishing?
Has been the case, I guess, for a number of years now. The key challenge has always been sort of pivoting away from having too much reliance on advertising spends. And so being able to monetize audiences in different ways, which are sort of sustainable, more repeat revenues, but without ultimately affecting the sort of the quality of the product and the content that you're producing. Even, I guess, before the global pandemic, we were witnessing a sort of a squeeze on what was traditional publishing. We've had, to compete with the Facebooks and the Twitters of this world, which have sort of way more data behind their audiences. And so I guess I've seen across the board long-standing publications being shut down. Those that have survived in what is now sort of a digital age have pivoted towards the subscription models and events. They sort of focused more on which events could they do. The subscription models, unfortunately, are not easy to implement, especially for sort of small publishers. They require a different type of content. They require different types of teams to be able to implement the strategy that you need to be able to ultimately put a paywall in front of content that was previously free. And so we're kind of having to look at, how do we recruit teams? What kind of staff do we need to bring in to be able to do that? And, what's the additional cost of doing that versus how much we're going to make on a subscription? I guess most small publishers won't have this kind of infrastructure in place, and they won't have the cash to invest in the technology that's required for it. So it will necessarily, ultimately, it will mean having to bring new staff into the business, and sort of having to manage those people is going to be difficult as well if you're not sort of tech savvy yourself. The ultimate challenge is finding people that are tech savvy, that have a good grasp of analytics, and then can pick up sort of trends in what's happening in the audiences that we own. On the flip side, I mentioned events. The event side of the business is a lot easier to pivot towards. The most obvious events are sort of awards nights, which I guess has been a sort of a staple in most publishers' diets for many years now. But there, I've kind of seen a rise in roundtables, sort of the smaller events, roadshows, which actually can be quite useful in terms of engaging audiences for advertisers. Obviously, now that COVID has taken over the world, companies that have heavily pivoted towards events are going to be suffering. And so what seemed like, I suppose, a sort of a safe bet in revenue, it may not longer be a sustainable one. I'm hoping that obviously next year we go back to normal. But if large-scale conferences and expos are restricted, then we may be seeing sort of a hit on top-line revenues and profitability if we're ultimately having to sell a smaller, higher quality audience, let's say, to what was predominantly a sort of high footfall sale.
Has the COVID crisis brought any opportunities for you in your sector?
Certainly, I think in any crisis there is opportunity. I certainly found it in 2008 when I started the business, and that was the height of the financial crash. Lots of the larger publishers were suffering at the time. So it means that as a small publisher, if you're more flexible, you can adapt to change more quickly. Obviously, the economy can't stand still, and so restriction on movement, I guess, has meant that advertisers are having to look for different ways of engaging with their customer base and their prospect base. So I guess what I found is that as a relatively small outfit, we're able to be sort of a bit more flexible, look for different ways, work with advertisers to help them sort of adjust as well how they were planning to spend their ad budgets. I guess most of the opportunities have arisen from converting physical events into digital ones. I guess the most obvious is sort of Zoom webinars coming in, replacing roundtables, video replacing awards nights. Whether this is sustainable or not, I'm not too sure, because obviously these are obvious routes for everybody and we've all taken them. Whether they can continue in this format, whether advertisers will continue to fund them and ultimately get the same value that they would have done from a physical event is debatable. But for now, I think they're working. And so I guess we'll continue until we hear feedback to the contrary.
What advice do you have to give for brands and publishers for the second half of 2020?
The second half of this year, I would say, preserve cash and focus on keeping morale in the team high. One thing that I've found quite difficult as a sort of a business owner is keeping teams engaged. We've all been working from home now, well, since the beginning of March. We had an awards event in Scotland, and when we came back, we had symptoms, so we had to self-isolate, and very soon after that, we were locked down anyway, so we haven't been back to the office since then. So I guess keeping that communication with teams going and ensuring that, stress levels aren't too high, people aren't concerned about their jobs. That's I guess the key to focus on. And the part about preserving cash, I guess, that's a simple business answer. We all have to. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. And ultimately, we still don't really know how budgets are going to be affected for next year, because we've been, in some cases, in a position whereby advertising was booked, for the year in advance. And so we've had to sort of be flexible with advertisers that don't have anything to ultimately advertise right now. We moved campaigns around. The end of this year is going to be heavy with campaigns, so we'll have to sort of navigate that. But whether budgets will be the same for next year, we don't know. And I'm guessing that most advertisers don't know. Where are they going to place their events budgets next year?
Thank you, Marco, for joining us today. It was insightful to hear from you. Stay tuned for the next episode of Mediaspace Members Daily. In the meantime, connect with us at mediaspace.global.